Hi, welcome to Inside the Moms Club, where being a mom is the coolest place to be. Here in the Moms Club, we believe that what embarrasses you now will make a great story later. And let's face it, you don't laugh sometimes, you're going to cry. Join us in having a good laugh together. I'm Monica Samuels. You are now inside the Moms Club, your private destination for all things mom. Welcome, moms. Welcome to the Moms Club today. I'm so glad that you could join us, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Orchid. Hey, Julie.
Hi, everybody.
So it's an exciting new week, and Julie, what are you up to? What's your week been looking like? Tell me the highlight and the low light.
Totally. Like I have like one great thing. I passed the 8th grade. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
I say that because it's been a special kind of hellish year doing pods online. Everybody can relate. And I can honestly say that my 14-year-old, it wasn't her best way to learn. So yesterday was a big accomplishment and we are moving on. We may repeat a couple things, but we're moving on. Forward, people. Forward.
Off to high school.
And the bad thing is that my dumb cat won't take his Prozac. Another show.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so for me, this last week I went to Florida.
All right.
And visited the beach, and that was fun. Although now my son is taking 7 of his college friends to the beach this coming week. And I'm a little concerned because...
What you don't know, you don't know.
Well, I was sitting on the beach and there were 2 red flags up, which I was then told. And there was like the emergency people back and forth up and down the beach. I mean, It was really nerve-wracking. And at one point, they even brought a helicopter to search for somebody. I mean, it was rough out there. And I looked out and there were these 3 kids, my son's age, basically, 3 guys. And they were in the water. They were messing around. They went way out. We were all watching them, and I think they were showing off to us. But really, what we were watching is we were praying they didn't drown. So I don't know that was the show they were thinking they were putting on. Is all of our fears. Right. And then the lifeguard, the guy drove by, pulled them out of the water. Mm-hmm. Gave them a lecture about, there's a $500 fine, which he waived. He was going to give him a warning. And as soon as he went back up the beach, one of them stood out there and decided they'd each take a lookout. They'd have a lookout for him. Well, and they all went back in the water. Well, I mean, it was not smart. I mean, it's just scary. And so now my son, I told him this story yesterday, and I said, look, Chase, your friends, I'm not going to be there. Your dad is in charge. And let's put it this way. He got to pick which parent. We said one parent has to be there for this trip. And he chose his dad.
Yes.
And we all know why. Yes. So I said, I at least need to share this information with him. And he said, well, you don't have to worry about me because I don't go into the water. Now, he does swim in a pool, but he refuses. He told me last summer that he hates all sea life.
He's a non-seaweed
which I don't.
He's not digging it.
Which how can you hate all sea life? Well, anyway, it's safer. Now, what he does want to do on this trip, he wants to skydive. That's another show, too.
Yeah.
That's not happening unless his dad lets him do it for some strange reason. But
I think the point is
but his 6 friends. I'm afraid that they're going to be the posers that were out there.
You don't have to be a small child. You could be an adult out there. The riptides, all of that, So it's not, it's important.
Yeah. Well, it's important to be safe. It's fun. The beach is fun. The pools are fun, but you got to be safe.
Yeah. And I think that, 19, 20-year-old boys, I think that the ocean might be the last thing that you should. They may have other things that they're out of.
Well, there's a list.
That's a long list.
And you know what? That wouldn't have been on my list until I saw it happen for myself. Because, the list was all the other stuff that they could get into.
There's nothing like seeing a rescue that will whip you into shape of, respecting the ocean, respecting a pool, respecting anything that has to do with
it would, but then I watched the first time he ran, see it zip by and the sirens and everything. And then like 10 minutes later, it happens again. Mm-hmm. And then you see the helicopter. I mean, you'd think people would have been like, no, I'm not going to get in there.
I don't know. Brain
and
development.
They don't know what the flags mean. I mean, but you could easily see. I mean, I'm telling you, it was so rough last week.
Yeah, that it wasn't.
Well, the water. So we had our chairs set up, and we were flooded by the chairs. We had to keep moving our chairs back because the water kept moving closer to us.
The seaweed.
Yeah. Well, and then my mother was with us, and she's deathly afraid of the water. And that's the thing. She never learned to swim, which actually makes her more dangerous when she gets anywhere near the water because she's so afraid of it that, So while we're sitting there on the beach and the waves are coming up, just like to our feet at the base of our chairs.
Right.
At one point, I got up to do something and she said, should we move back? Because is this going to go over my head? I said,
like a tsunami?
I don't think that's
going to take her out to sea?
Yeah. Oh, okay. And then my sister asked me, well, what does a tsunami look like? I said, Dana, it's not a tsunami because a tsunami, first of all, the water would go way back. You would kind of know that this is not normal.
Clear, it's a wave.
But still, my mother's deathly afraid of the water. And I watched these kids who had absolutely zero fear of what was out there. And I really think something like a healthy balance and an understanding and knowledge is so important. And that is why, like today, I am just thrilled that we have with us an Olympic swimmer, Amanda Beard, who's a 4-time Olympian, is joining us today. And Amanda has a great story. She is the recipient of 2 golds, 4 silvers, and a bronze medal over 4 games. She is also the co-founder of a learn to swim school called Beard Swim Company, which she'll tell us more about today.
Awesome.
She's on the board of Hope Floats, which is dedicated to swim safety and water safety.
Critical.
And she's written her memoir. She's written a book. She just has an amazing story, and she's in the Moms Club because she has 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Welcome, Amanda, to the Moms Club.
Hi, how are you guys?
We are great.
Awesome.
You're great. So, Amanda, you are obviously, your story is amazing. You started, your first Olympic Games was when you were 14 years old. When did you start swimming? I mean, obviously you were an Olympian young, so you must have started very young to learn to swim. Tell us about your story. Yeah, what happened?
Well, so my parents, we grew up in Southern California. So kind of going along the lines of what you were talking about with water safety and having that healthy respect for water, my mom and dad were like, these kids need to know how to swim. So it was a priority in my parents' life to get me and my 2 older sisters like water smart. I don't even want to say water safe because you have to be water smart, right? Because even if you're a strong swimmer, something can happen. So I started mommy me classes with my mom when I was 6 months old. And I loved being in the water. And I joined a little summer league team when I was 4 years old and became kind of obsessed and chaotic, like just really intense about swimming and just fell in love. And by the time I was about 11, 12 years old, I was training year round and pretty darn committed to it.
Now, did you drive that? Now, I asked this question because my son played briefly college baseball. And so we started that process with him when he was 5 and all the way through high school. And there were peaks and valleys of that. There were times when I felt like I was pushing him. And at one time he had 3 coaches. He was 9 years old. And he finally came to me and said, I think I'm overscheduled. I have a pitching instructor, a catching instructor, and a speed coach. And I was like, okay, and that was more like keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing, but it was a parent driven thing.
Yeah.
And, and then when he was 12, he seemed like he was burning out. And I said, you know what? I don't want to make you do things you don't want to do. If you want to do it, you just tell your dad and me, and we'll pay for whatever, but we're not going to do that anymore. And that's when he realized he loved it and he wanted to do it. But I saw parents being awful to their kids. I saw parents being awful to other kids. That even happened in my own life. I was playing tennis once in a tennis championship when I was in 4th grade. And the mother of the kid I was playing was horrible, screaming awful things at me, 4th grader. Yeah. And I was determined to be not that kid, but
you're like, have your mom come out
woman's
on the court.
daughter.
Like, I want to play her.
I want to hold them to her. So, I mean, were you the driving force behind it? Did you feel like your parents pushed you? I mean, what was your experience there?
So we have a lot in common because my son's a baseball player. So I feel you on all of that stuff. He's 11 turning 12, and I can get into like that stuff with how we work with him on all that. But as far as my own personal upbringing with my parents, my mom was like, just more of like a loving and support system, right? Just because she's into sports because her kids like sports, but she never played sports. So she was just like, you guys are great. You looked wonderful. Just kind of that, like, you're like, Mom, I got disqualified. It's like, I don't care. Good job.
Good job.
My dad was more of the athlete. So he played baseball, basketball, and football, and played college basketball, but had no swimming like knowledge, right? So he learned all of his swimming knowledge through watching me kind of grow up and go through all of that kind of stuff. So I feel like kind of knowing your place, right? So my dad knew his place where he's not a swimmer. He's not a swim coach. So he never interjected like, well, when you swim freestyle, you should really do this with your hands and your shoulder. He just was like, again, like a support system for me where he was, I mean, as you guys know, if you have kids in sports, he was driving me at all awful times of the day to practices, to meets. I mean, at the age of 13, I was traveling all over the world for swim meets. So, I mean, it became a huge part of having that just kind of very solid people in my life, where when I would go home from swim practice, I'd train sometimes, 5-6 hours a day in high school when I was, 13, 14 years old. The last thing I want to do, sit around the dinner table and talk about swimming sets. So they made sure that I really felt like I had an identity and I existed to them outside of what my sport was, which is exactly what we try to do with my son. I noticed at like a really young age when we kind of like, not pushed him, but kind of like, okay, you have to show up for practice. You have, he pushed back, like he didn't enjoy that. So my husband and I kind of just took not necessarily the hands-off approach, but like just, hey, we're going to be your support system. When you need to vent about your sport, we're here for you. When you want to dissect things, we're here for you. But it's not going to be like the sole existence of our life. And we've really seen him blossom. And that's kind of how I did it, right? Because like you said, they have so many different coaches, so many people inputting stuff and putting pressure and stress on them. The last thing they need is additional stress from a family member.
I think that's an incredibly critical point that you make that I loved, that I heard you talk about, is being a support system, because all parents need to be reminded they're not the coach. And like you have said before, if the coach needs to talk to you, he'll contact you. So putting your trust in was super key. And for us to be reminded as moms and the dads to be a support role. And fun is key at this age. We don't want the critical amount of pressure to become the focus of the sport. So that leads me to ask you, listen, you're an Olympic swimmer. I have a 14-year-old girl and I see her walking out to the soccer field with a teddy bear. I loved that story. Like, I thought that was amazing because she still has that type of innocence. And I know you took it as a dare, but I loved every second of that story. So my question to you is like, how do you have to hold yourself back from being like, okay, I assume your son's, like you said, 11 to 12 years old. You have to have a passion. You have to pick something. You have to pick something you're really good at and go for it. Like, how do you, as an Olympian, hold yourself back from saying that? Because I know you have a little bit in there that wants to say that to him,
Oh,
like every day.
Well, I mean, you mean just like kind of reminding him of like my,
I mean, like picking a sport and going after it like you did. How do you hold yourself back?
Well, I tried to like expose them to like a lot of sports, and he just naturally like grabbed on to baseball. Awesome. And it's become like an obsession I see me in him 100%. Like it's like how I was just obsessed and like I wanted to like do everything that revolved around swimming in my sport. I see him doing that with baseball. And I love that because I didn't do that. I don't know baseball. Like I'm learning baseball, but I don't know baseball. So everyone thinks, oh, your kids are swimmers. Like, are they on a swim team? I'm like, my kids get to choose what they want to do and what path they follow because they have to have that passion and motivation, or you're not going to have fun and you're going to be done with it by the time you're 13 or 14 years old. And I want them to have this like really enriched, fulfilling life. But yes, they have to do some sort of activity, whether it's a sport, music, art, whatever it is. And it's really good. Like I do see, like, I don't really talk about my swimming or my career with my kids or even my husband very much unless they ask me about it. And then I'll bring up, like, if my son feels like he's having like an issue or struggling about like a certain situation, especially like being mentally prepared for something, I'll recall a story and tell him about, you know, a situation I was in. But I don't push a lot of my life, I guess, on awesome. Him. I more so want him to like kind of go through his stuff and then like tap into me as a resource when needed, I guess.
I love that because we've moved into an advisory role, don't you think?
Yeah.
When they come to you for questions, because no kid wants to hear, well, when I was young, this is how I did it. And
yes,
I mean, it does not work. So thank you for pushing that point because we all need to hear it.
And I think from everything I've observed, I've actually been working on a book for a little while about the subject of kids in sports and parents' role in that. And in the research for that, I realized at about 12 or 13, that is when either their passion takes off and they're directed, they have to direct it, or they quit. And generally, if a parent's like really into something or an expert, like the biggest thing in baseball is that all these dads they had played baseball or they were in college baseball, and they would stand back there and tell their kid while they're up to bat, drop your elbow, move your toe. I mean, like, think about the pressure of that. And, you know, and so, but like my husband is not into sports at all. So when my oldest son was playing baseball, one time he went up to Jared, he was trying to make him feel better. And he said, Jared, I don't know why they said you struck out. You didn't even swing. I was like, oh my God. So all these dads are like, oh boy,
you're like, Mark,
he's not a sports fan.
Yeah.
I was the sports fan, but it helps that to be that support and to be able to share that with the kid, with your child. And even what you're saying applies to, like, in my life, I was an attorney and my son now is asking me questions, and I try to bring up my experiences in helping him because he thinks he wants to go to law school. He thinks he wants to be a lawyer. But I'm not pressuring him like, you need to be a lawyer. It'd probably be the worst thing I could do. So I'm there to be supportive of what he wants to do, but not direct him. And I do think that the times that he gets frustrated with me is when I do start bragging and say, well, you know, back when he was in high school, I was the who's who of my high school. Which I was, by the way. You know, anyway,
okay.
Just so you know.
I didn't know that.
Just to let you know. Anyway, but you know, they don't want to hear that. They want you to support them. And so I saw that with those parents. I once saw a dad push his son into the dugout because he was one of the coaches too. And he shoved the kid. And then there was another kid who, through the whole season, talked about how he hated his father. And he would go into the dugout and the kids would hear him crying. Once the coach even took him aside and tried to make him see that I had the same kind of dad. Yeah. And here's the kid crying in front of all these kids, expressing how much he hates his parent over something that should be fun. And it should be directed towards kids. Swimming is really, I mean, my cousin's daughter does some national swim thing up in Ohio. Yeah. They get up at 4 a.m. to drive to the pool. She's
having flashbacks.
You gotta, well, you have to be self-motivated, I would imagine. The kids that you were with, were you around a lot of swimmers growing up whose parents were the reason they were there and that wasn't such a good thing? Or did some of them make it through? Or, share a little bit of that side of it, because it helps for moms to hear, maybe we should not do this to our kid anymore.
Well, I mean, I've seen the spectrum of, parents who are extremely hands off, right? They drop off and they pick up, and it's just like the babysitting, right? It's like, this is okay. Here's an activity and I need to get more stuff done. And then I see the parents who are literally walking up and down the pool deck, following their kid, like listening to everything the coach is saying, and then dissecting that on the way home. And I've seen kids be successful on both sides of that spectrum, but success in their sport doesn't necessarily dictate that it was a wonderful experience for them, right? I mean, like, to me, being successful in your sport is also coming out on the other side and truly loving those memories and the road that you took for that sport career, right? I have friends that I know in the swimming world that came out of and retired from swimming and were extremely successful, who are so happy to be away from a pool, don't ever want to see one again, just like almost, it's like this, I don't want to ever jump back in the water again. I don't, just because it felt like such a chore and a job for them. And so the kids that I saw a lot of kids that you would have thought they were going to be really successful in their sport when they were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. But that was kind of like the peak and their highlight of their career. And a lot of them, especially going through puberty and stuff like that as a teenager, that can change and put a lot of additional outside pressures and stress on your sport. So you see these, especially females, you see them really peak when they're 13, 14, and then they really fall off. And I did too. I peaked at about like 13, 14, and I fell off for a couple years. And if I didn't have the most amazing coaches and parents and friends around me, I would have been done with swimming for the rest of my life. That would have been my swimming career, just that little blip on the screen. But because I had such a great support system and I enjoyed going to practice because my friends were there, my coach made it challenging, but really fun and exciting. I continued, down that career path. But the people who, I think the most unhealthy relationships that you can have with your kid is when you really, really force and push them to do something they don't want to do. Of course, you're going to have those moments, 4 a.m. Like, of course, many, many mornings when my dad woke me up at 4:30 in the morning, I'd go, I don't want to go. I just want to sleep. So there was a balance where I think he had to decide. There were a couple days where he's like, okay, you can sleep in. And then a couple days where he's like, nope, you got to get out of bed. You got it. So it's knowing when to push and when to not push. Because it's okay to, like, I always tell kids, it's okay to have some balance and have a life. Sports are really cool. They're very important, but they're also just, that's one part of your life. Like, if you're not making memories in other parts, you're going to really look back and regret that you didn't. I mean, I had girls that I went to high school with that they skipped prom because they had swim practices or a swim meet. And I feel like if I did that, I would have looked back and I would have been mad at everyone around me and myself and like be like, why did I miss out on that great memory?
So I think that I have to bring up a critical point that I think it's important for people listening to Inside the Moms Club that you can touch base on, that you just really hit the nail on the head when you said, I support them, I'm there for them, love is my job, but you also didn't have the easiest road. And so do you talk about to your kids that it's okay not to be okay? And I think that is, your story is so amazing. And I can't wait to, share it with my 18-year-old and let her listen to the audiobook that I've been listening to as well. And you had a complete and utter amazing support system. You're like, I have my parents, I have my girlfriends who protect me at school, everything. So can you talk a little bit about that, your self-esteem, and kind of like let people know that, it wasn't all roses? Like,
No,
you know,
no, my
yeah,
goodness, no. I mean, that's the thing, right? There's so much stress already on me. I couldn't have asked for a better environment for myself to put myself in, to go through this journey. Yet it still wreaked havoc on me. I still looked at my body and was really upset the way that I looked for all different reasons, right? Like at first I was like, I'm too muscular, I look like a boy. And then like later on, I felt like I was too fat. Like it was a roller coaster of how I felt my body looked. And, and no one in my family was talking about like anything regarding that. It's all, that negative loop in that brain, right? Yeah, man, it's really hard to like kind of snap out of that. And you can have the best people around you in your life and you can still get kind of sucked into that. And I mean, I for a couple years of my life and my swimming, I just felt like I was the worst swimmer human. And like I would go and I'd swim laps and I'd be like, well, I suck. This is horrible. Why am I even bothering doing this? And and I would read things about myself saying how I was washed up and worthless in the sport. I was one hit wonder, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I totally am. But my coach wasn't saying that to me. My coach was still goal setting with me. My parents didn't say anything like that to me. Like no one around me was saying that, but you're your worst critic, right? So, correct. Man, and being an athlete, you are kind of a perfectionist, but it's also okay to fall down a million times. It is absolutely okay. And in my, later on in my swimming career, I started going and doing all of these, like swim clinics with, especially young, like teenagers and tweens and stuff like that. And I was just talking to them and like telling them everything amazing about my swimming career. And I swam at this Olympics and I did this and did that. And I'd walk away from these events and I would feel kind of gross with myself because I felt like I wasn't being honest to them. Like they needed to hear so much more about what it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall down. It's okay to like have these thoughts about yourself. And how do we make ourselves better? How do we improve these things? How do we motivate ourselves? Like instead of telling them all these lies of how my life was great and I dove in the pool and everything was awesome. And that's where I ended up writing my book, is because I just really wanted to share the reality of like, this isn't what I just go through. This is what everybody's going through, and it's okay to talk about it, and we can still be successful and we can still come out the other side and be really happy and have an awesome life and move forward. And are we going to keep bumping down once in a while? Absolutely. And that's okay.
Yeah, that is great. I think that is important that they see the entire picture. In fact, what they told my son when he was playing baseball, one of his coaches had played college baseball and won a national championship. And he said, remember, Chase, baseball is a game of failure. Mm-hmm. And he told them to remember the number of times. There was a number that they were always supposed to remember before they went up to bat. And it was the number of times that Babe Ruth struck out. And that was to know that even the greatest have their moments that aren't so great. So, well, Amanda, we have some moms who would like to meet you. There are mom Zoomers. And so welcome mom Zoomers into the Moms Club. So, moms, let me introduce you to Amanda. First, we have Jennifer Marsh. She is an architect and the mother of a son and a daughter. Welcome, Jennifer, to the Moms Club today.
Hi, happy to be here. So glad to see everyone.
And we have Helen Savage from Arlington, Virginia, the mom of a soon-to-be fifth grader. Hey, Helen, welcome back into the Moms Club.
Thanks, Monica.
Madison Carter is the mom of a 3-year-old and a baby, and she lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome, Madison.
Thank you.
And Leslie Harrell, last but certainly not least, was a synchronized swimmer in high school, and she has a son and a daughter. Welcome, Leslie, to the Moms Club.
These are one of those things that you bring up when you're like, what's one thing? You pick 3 things, and what thing isn't true? Like synchronized swimming is always my one thing nobody guesses that I actually did.
No one would ever. Well, not because that's a hard note. That's just not the first thing that comes to mind when I'm guessing something. So why don't you start, Leslie? Do you have any questions for Amanda?
my gosh, yes. I just think it's so great. And having been not an Olympic athlete, but as I was telling Amanda earlier, I had, when I was a synchronized swimmer, my duet partner went to the national team and was an alternate on the Olympics. And then another one of our friends who was on the team was later an Olympian. And like just the hard work that goes into it. And I just love how, and this is swimming, I can relate to the swimming analogy and everything. And I laugh because my friends now with their kids, they've really had a struggle. I mean, you kind of talked about this and kind of how it's a balance, but the struggle of like having had this career, and even if you did it young, it's obviously in your heart and your soul to be competitive, because I'm sorry, but people that reach the Olympics or professional athletes or whatever just have something in them that most other people just don't have. So like, you know, you kind of talked about it, but like, how do you personally balance, like, obviously your support system is great. And that's one thing I love about your story, because I'm like, you know, so many times now, especially with women's sports, it's so frustrating because there's always some demon in the background. There's always somebody doing something bad to kids. And it's so great to hear that you were just like, I had a great support group. It's just hard. It is what it is. But now that you're looking in the rearview mirror and you see your kids doing it, like, how do you battle it, like with yourself? I mean, and now you've been able to take your passion and show it to these kids, and you're doing these great things by setting up the Beard Swim Company. And I just, you know, how do you do all that, and how do you kind of balance it? Because you know that this was part of your past. Like, it's just, and like how you've got to feel the urge to, like, you see an athlete and you go, oh my gosh, you have it. You know, like with one of your kids you're teaching to swim, or your own kids. So tell me some, just like, how do you balance it? Because you just have to have an insane amount of competitiveness just in you that you just have to balance.
Yeah. Oh, well, absolutely. And I think that's, you're like answering your question, right? Almost with like, you have to have balance, right? But you also have to understand that, the athletes that I think continue on are doing it because they have that self motivation, especially as you continue to like age, right? So when you're young, it's you listen to your parents a little bit more, right? So when you're 10, 11, 12,
and then you're don't
listening
until you're 25, and then they become relevant again.
Yes, basically, right? So when you become a teenager and like late teens, early 20s, somewhere in there, right? What your parents have to say, and when your parents are like, no, you have to go to baseball, you have to go to this, you start kind of having your own thought process about it, and you kind of start to push back if it's not something that you love and enjoy. And sometimes as parents, we don't listen to that, right? We just are like, well, I like to go to the baseball field, so you're going to have to like to go to the baseball field. So we're going, right? So we stop thinking about, okay, well, why am I getting this pushback? Why am I getting this? It's balance. It really is. It's balance in all areas of life. It's not just like being in sports, and it's the mental side. It's having friends outside of your sport. It's still going on family vacations and doing that kind of stuff. It just all looks a little bit different when you have a really busy schedule. You take vacations in odd times of the year and all that kind of stuff. But like I was saying earlier, just having an identity outside of your sport is so huge, right? So when, like, we went on a vacation like about 2 weeks ago, just an overnight, and I don't think we talked about sports once the whole entire time. We were talking about so many other different things and stuff. And I think that is really healthy to have those breaks in life for everybody. I didn't talk about work. My husband didn't talk about work. We talked about so many other things that were just different and fun and enjoyable. And we totally let go. And then we came back to life and we got back into our groove of things. And, but having those moments where you can completely check out of everything and reevaluate too, and kind of refresh yourself. And it's good to miss stuff, miss work, miss like your spouse.
Well, and one, just, I know everybody wants to say something, but one other real quick thing I wanted to ask you is, was it a no-brainer for you to go into your swim company, or did that really take some time to kind of come? Because, you know, most people I know who did it, like, they just got away from the sport, as you were saying. They just kind of got away from it entirely. So just real quick before you move on to somebody else, like, was it something naturally that you really just were passionate about doing, or did you kind of get into it? How did you decide to do that?
A mixture of everything. I didn't, I've been involved with water safety and drowning prevention since I can remember. And I didn't consider opening like a learn to swim facility of my own until my girlfriend actually opened one. We were living in Arizona and my kids swam there and learned how to swim at her facility. And I was like, this is amazing. This is the coolest experience. My kids are becoming water smart and they love like being in the water, and I get to like see them grow as little fishies. And so that was when it like dawned on me, like, wow, this is a hard job, like building a whole facility out and managing that, but it is so darn rewarding when you see these little kids coming in kicking and screaming who are so scared of the water, and a couple weeks later they're kicking and screaming because we're pulling them out of the water because they don't want to leave. And that to me is just like, wow, rewarding. It's super rewarding. It's very cool. So no, I didn't always know this was what I was going to do, but I'm having a lot of fun.
So Madison, you have one of them is an infant, and but you have a 3-year-old. So do you have any questions for Amanda?
Yeah. So my 3-year-old, we did swim lessons last year, and she loves the pool, but swim lessons were just a no-go for some reason. So how do you recommend making them feel comfortable with the actual lessons?
Did she not like? Was it more like a separation from you, like leaving you to go to, or were you guys doing like a parent-child classes? Were you in the water?
There. I wasn't in the water, but I was sitting right there, and she did not have it.
Yeah. And that's pretty normal. We have a lot of kiddos, and it just takes a long time for some of them, like to adjust to that, to kind of, it's just a new environment. And even if they, we have parents come in, well, they love being in the bathtub and stuff like that, but I always compare a bathtub is to a pool like a pool is to the ocean. They don't really, just because they like tubby time doesn't mean like going into a pool is going to have those same like fun emotions that you see surface. It's a very intimidating environment. It can be loud in pool areas. There's other kids. These are strangers that are holding me, taking me underwater. So that's a lot to take on, especially as a little child. And that just takes a lot of time to adjust to, and consistency with that is always really good. But you can also work with a lot of that stuff at home in the tub, because the best thing that you can do is continue to make sure that they're getting water on their face and all that kind of stuff, or even in showers, because the hardest thing to teach the kids is to get comfortable going underwater, because that can be very scary. And then floating on their back, that can be very scary for them too. And you can work on that stuff at home in the tub, so that when you do take them to pools, it's not like this complete foreign environment.
Yeah, my oldest son, he was a lot like your daughter Madison. He was really not good with the swim lessons, to the point we really felt sorry for the instructor. I mean, she could tell she was. But then he made this transition, and then they asked him to be, when he got a tiny bit older, to be on their swim team, because she said he has an amazing natural backstroke. I'm like, he went from your worst nightmare to really loving it. So yeah, it's really fun to watch that transition.
Amanda, I'm just glad that you didn't say, like, I was raised in Hawaii when I was little, and basically swim lessons went, let's throw them in the deep end and see if they come up. I swear to God, that's what happened. And I mean, thank God I loved the water. But I'm glad we've evolved.
We have come a long way since those days. Helen, do you have any questions for Amanda?
Well, I was going to make one comment. So our daughter, when she was, 2, 1.5, 2, 3, we did the Mommy and Me group class at the local indoor pool, which worked out well. But then as she got older, a neighbor we had one-on-one lessons for her with an older neighbor girl at the outdoor pool in the summertime, and that's how she really developed an ability to swim without us in the pool, with her one-on-one with someone actually doing everything. And we're there sitting on the sidelines, but not in the pool at all, not saying anything, not doing anything. And then so just as a little bit of advice to go from the Mommy and Me to the one-on-one lessons really was a great benefit. But so our daughter plays soccer, and I coached her team for 3 years, kindergarten, first and second, for rec soccer. And a lot of her friends went, immediately at second grade on to travel. And it's just, they've, or travel. And so fortunately, Olivia didn't want to do that. She's a good player, but she's not, uber soccer all the time. And so she went to advanced development, and now she's doing travel. And, thank goodness for COVID and travel soccer, because I don't have to spend all my time in the car, but, so my question is she's competitive, but with herself. She's not competitive with the other players. She doesn't care that, someone scored a goal and she didn't, but she's excited when she does score a goal. So my question is, travel soccer starts in the late summer in August and goes, fall, winter, and then spring. And we're finishing up with a tournament this weekend and one more game. She has no interest in doing anything soccer over the summer. And, do I need to be worried that she's not into any other sports? I mean, or do I just let her continue enjoying soccer the way she's enjoying it? Or again, I don't want to be the pushy soccer mom, but I want her to, continue to progress.
It's a good question.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome question. And I wouldn't push her to force her into playing soccer over the summer. If she wants to create different experiences or do other things over the summertime, that's great. I mean, she's not going to progress if you're battling her the whole time to go to the soccer field.
That was my instinct, but I just wanted to, because there's a lot of soccer camps and this and that, and she's going to different camps and they have some soccer components. She's going to sleepaway camp for 2 weeks, horseback riding camp for a week. And, just some other general camps, but nothing that's just soccer intensive.
Yeah. Well, and that's great too. I mean, you don't have to just do your sport to help your sport, right? So like for my swimming, I also played soccer. So I played soccer. I ride mountain bikes, I surf, I snowboard. I do a lot of other things outside of the pool, which all physically help me inside the pool, right? So it's not like I have to be swimming laps 24/7. I have to have some separation, and that's okay. And it'll probably make her a happier soccer player when she comes back and revisits.
I'm not going to push her to do anything. And at this point, she really won't do anything she doesn't want to do at 9 years old. Yeah,
there you go.
Well, 8th grade should be really fun.
Yeah. Woo! My son is almost 12 and my daughter is almost 8. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, does your daughter play sports? What is she doing?
Yep, she wants to be just like her brother. So she actually plays basketball. She's got these really long legs, so that's pretty fun. And then she plays softball, and she's she's loving it. It's really cool. She's dragged around to baseball fields all the time. So now she's like, it's pretty cute. She wants to play softball. She wants to throw and play catch with all the dads standing around and stuff. And they're good sports. They all play catch with her. So it's pretty cute.
Oh. That's great. So something Helen said reminded me too. It struck me, how young should you have your kids being that competitive? Like a travel soccer team when you're in second grade, or I say that I was like surprised to hear that. And then I thought, well, Chase was on the all-star baseball team, T-ball at 5. And I know we couldn't commit to any family vacations when he was on T-ball all-star. So because he had the season in the summer, but that was a very competitive, and the parents were hyper competitive about it, but they were 5. Now you were in the Olympics at 14. So, but what is your feeling about, like, how early should they be competing like that? Or is it just, whenever, like, we're all good and 5 years old is a perfect time to start chasing the dream? Yeah.
I played club soccer. So I was on a travel soccer team and I was on a club travel swim team up until I was about 12 years old, and they started really conflicting with each other, and I was getting injured on the soccer field. That wasn't good for the swimming pool. And so it came to the point where they just were like, you have to choose a sport. So this, it came to where I could not just physically do both, because swimming's year round. So it conflicts with everything.
Yeah.
So I just chose swimming for like my son. My son started playing like on a travel select baseball team when he was 7, but was actually a really cool experience because when he was 7, it was the select team, but they just practiced all summer. They didn't even they just like helped develop them and practice. So it was actually pretty low key. When he was 8, it was a little bit more. They had like 3 tournaments for the year, and it kind of slowly progressed. So it wasn't like this jumping in like head first, full steam ahead. He made the decision when he turned 10 that he wanted to get more serious about his baseball. So he wanted to try out for a different baseball program that's close to us, which had, was a lot more practices, more tournaments. But that was all kind of him making those choices. And we presented him with choices too of like, okay, so you can stay on this team and do like what everything would be, right? Have these discussions, like what this would look like. And he was asked to play like on a travel basketball team. And it was with all of his buddies and his friends. I was like, oh, this is awesome. He's totally going to want to do this. And I presented it to him. I was like, okay, but he's like, nope, I don't want to. Doesn't sound like, I just want to play basketball for fun. Like, if it takes away from my baseball, I don't want to do it. I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. But giving them like all of the, like, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to be, and help them make the choices, right? Like, but don't push them into the choices. Like, just kind of give them the information of what everything will look like, and learning how to make those decisions for yourself, hopefully will help when you don't have mommy and daddy around with you to make those hard decisions.
Jennifer, do you have a quick question for Amanda?
I do have a quick question. I had both of my children essentially drown proofed, and it was a 3-day program. It was very intensive, and it was a very different experience for both my kids, which basically was 3 days in a pool with an instructor who basically just like held their head underwater and helped them find the stairs until they figured it out and got to the point where they could actually use their arms and swim from the deep end to, and this is at 3. They both did it when they were 3, and they became amazing swimmers, and they all love to swim. But I look back on it and realized it was very traumatic for them. My son could hold his breath underwater just in the bathtub, so it was less traumatic for him. But how do you feel about programs like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like with everything, I always feel like you have to have like a healthy relationship with what you're doing. So I have children that have gone through programs like that who then come and start swimming here. And I feel like we have a lot of fear that we have to work through with them to kind of redevelop a respect and love for the water. And I know it's hard because learning to swim is important. You want your kids to be safe around water. But it's also something that I feel like is okay to develop. And I always refer to it as almost like building a house. Like, you want to lay a really strong foundation, right? So like creating that love for the water, and then you're kind of adding all those skills in and developing all that. Which I'm a fan of every kid learning to swim. So I would never say don't do something or don't do, because if a kid is becoming water smart and being safer around different aquatic life, that's great. Our approach and my approach is just a little bit more of it takes a little bit more time, I guess.
Right. Well, great. Well, this has been really tremendous. Thank you so much, Zoomer moms, and thank you so much, Amanda. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.
And you can find Amanda. You can check out her website, amandabeardofficial.com, or her Instagram at Amanda Ray Beard. And we so appreciate you being with us today. We also would like to thank our sponsors, Blitz Concessions, which is a solution for all your volunteer organizations. They raise money for social concessions, drive-through dinners, swag sales, and they have an app that makes it so easy for your local concession stand, your baseball team, to raise money. You can find them at www.blitzconcessions.com. You can find us on our website, InsideTheMomsClub.com, or at Inside the Moms Club on Instagram, and we're also on Twitter, and we are now on Clubhouse. And you can join us for some interesting discussions on Clubhouse. Well, I can't believe that time has gone by so fast. It has been tremendous, but we'll be back next time with extraordinary moms just like you. We know that your me time is precious and valuable. Thanks for spending some of it with us. Remember our motto. Mm-hmm. If you don't laugh sometimes, you're going to cry. That's sort of a mom thing. Keep laughing. Bye for now. We'll see you next time on Inside the Moms Club. Bye.